Okay, so what if I told you there's a food system that basically feeds itself, manages itself, and could keep your family fed with high-quality protein for decades, with almost no work from you? Now, I know that sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it's not. It's a real, 2,400-year-old technology that we've almost completely forgotten. So let's dive into how this incredible self-sufficient ecosystem actually works. Our story kicks off way back in 475 BC with a Chinese fish farmer named Fan Li. Now, this guy wrote a guide to fish farming, and in it, he described a system so incredibly efficient that, honestly, it sounds impossible even today. He claimed a single one of these installations could produce more protein per square foot than cattle ranching. And get this, once it's set up, it could feed your family for decades without you ever having to buy feed. That is a huge claim, so let's see if it actually holds up.
And when you put this ancient system side by side with modern agriculture, the difference is just, well, it's staggering. On one hand, you have the pond. It's self-feeding, it requires very little labor, and it has this incredibly high output for its size. And on the other hand, you've got industrial ranching, which is totally dependent on constant feed, a ton of work, and just massive amounts of land. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
So how in the world did a system this perfect even come about? Well, here's the crazy part. It wasn't designed by some genius in a lab. It was discovered and fine-tuned and kind of accidentally perfected over thousands of years of just watching nature. And the big breakthrough? It came from something totally random. An emperor banned his favorite fish.
Let's just walk through this journey real quick. It all starts around 3500 BC, with farmers literally just noticing fish stuck in puddles after a flood. Simple observation. By 1600 BC, they're not just observing, they're actively managing these ponds. But the real game changer happens in the 7th century. The emperor's family name was Li, which sounded just like the Chinese word for the common carp, Li Yu. So out of respect, he banned anyone from raising or eating it. This forced farmers to innovate, or, starve. And their solution was nothing short of brilliant. They started raising multiple types of fish in the very same pond. See, some fish would eat stuff off the bottom, others would filter algae out of the water, and some would nibble on plants near the surface. Each fish had its own little job, its own unique niche. This idea, born completely out of necessity, is called polyculture. By stacking different species together, they created a waste-free system that was more productive than anything anyone had ever seen.
Which, of course, leads to a huge question. If this system is so effective, so ancient, and so proven, why have most of us in the West never even heard of it? Why didn't it become a cornerstone of our own food supply?
Well, the reasons are kind of a mix of culture and commerce. European settlers, they came over with their traditions. Cattle, pigs, that sort of thing. A self-managing pond just seemed too simple, almost primitive. And by the time the 20th century rolled around, a pond in your backyard was for looks, not for dinner. But the knowledge wasn't totally lost. It was actually rediscovered for a little while in the 1960s at Auburn University. And when researchers there actually tested the system, they were absolutely blown away.
The results were just incredible. They found that your typical quarter acre of cattle pasture can produce about 200 pounds of beef in a year. But a tiny backyard pond, a fraction of that size, could pump out up to 350 pounds of fish. Think about that. That's almost double the protein in a tiny fraction of the space with basically zero inputs.
So why didn't this research change everything? Well, you can probably guess. It comes down to money. The second you build a productive pond in your yard, you stop buying as much meat from the store. And with the industrial meat system in the US being a $200 billion industry, well, there's just no financial incentive to tell people about a system that makes them completely self-sufficient. But here's the good news. The knowledge survived. Because once you understand the basic biology, the ecosystem practically builds itself. It's not just about the fish you see. It's a 4-part living system where every single piece plays a critical role. So let's break it down.
First up, you've got the ducks, and they're not just there for decoration. They are the pond's biological managers. They're constantly stirring up nutrients from the bottom, their waste is loaded with nitrogen that fuels the whole food chain, and they eat pests. Oh, and as a little bonus, a small flock can give you over 1,000 eggs a year.
Second, the plants. Think of them as the pond's lungs and kidneys. They filter out all the waste, which keeps the water clean and prevents nasty algae blooms. They pump oxygen into the water for the fish, and some plants, like duckweed, are incredible. They can double their mass every 48 hours, creating a never-ending, self-renewing food source for the ducks. Third, of course, you've got the fish. This is the main event, the harvest. Species like bluegill and catfish are perfect for most of the US. They're basically experts at turning all those free-floating nutrients, everything from duckways to plankton and bugs, into a healthy, high-protein food source for you and your family.
And finally, you have the invisible workers, the beneficial bacteria. These guys are the real heroes. They power the entire nitrogen cycle. They take the harmful ammonia from fish waste and convert it into nitrates, which just so happens to be the perfect fertilizer for all those aquatic plants. It's the biological engine that makes the whole system run on its own.
All right, so this all sounds amazing in theory, but how do you actually build one? Let's get practical and walk through the steps to turn this ancient idea into a real functioning ecosystem right in your own backyard.
Honestly, it's way more straightforward than you think. You dig a small pond, maybe 10 by 15 feet, with a shallow shelf on one side for plants, you line it, you fill it with water, and then you start adding life. But you do it in stages. First, the plants. Let them get settled for a few weeks. Then, you add the ducks to get that nutrient cycle going. And finally, about a month after that, you add your fish. And here's maybe the best part. You're probably thinking this is going to cost a fortune, right? Nope. For the whole shebang, a complete family-scale protein system, you're looking at a one-time cost of maybe $400 to $600. Just compare that to what a family spends on meat and eggs in just a couple of months. The value is just undeniable. And maybe the most radical part of this whole thing is the maintenance, or, the lack of it. For that first year, your main job is literally just to watch. You watch as this little ecosystem finds its own balance. Your only real chore is maybe topping off the water if you hit a dry spell. That's it. No feeding, no chemicals, no constant tinkering. You're just letting nature do its thing.
And that brings us to the real point of all this. After that first year, you're not just harvesting fish and eggs, you're harvesting something way more valuable, something you just can't buy at a store.
See, in most places, a pond this size doesn't need any kind of government permit. You're just collecting rainwater on your own property. You don't need to ask for anyone's permission to build your own food independence.
So what does that feel like? I mean, really, what does it feel like to know that no matter what's happening with supply chains or grocery store prices, you can just walk into your backyard and get a healthy meal? It's this quiet confidence, right? A sense of security that I think most of us have forgotten is even possible.
And that, ultimately, is the power of this ancient system. You have built something that cannot be taxed, that can't be regulated, and that can't easily be taken away. You've built real, genuine sovereignty, one shovelful of dirt at a time. The pond is waiting.